Very good, friends. Well, here's another episode of Aunt Barb's Magic Oven. We're doing these in order as best I can do. Don't think I goofed today. This is chapter 7, A Dead Man's Tale. Okay, A Dead Man's Tale. Okay, here we go. Funny, but now that I was a bubblehead, I did remember my most recent past life. In that life, I was the meanest SOB you'd ever want to know. I lived in the South in the mid 1800s. I think my home was somewhere near east of Raleigh. I was this big gorilla of a man. I guess I was a mean drunk, and I was even meaner when I was sober. I'd beat people up and rob places, and heck, once in my old hometown, I robbed the general store where, when I was a kid, they used to give me candy. I left the poor store owner, old Mr. Wilson, upside down in his pickle barrel. The only reason he didn't drown was that his wife grabbed him by the legs and snatched him out. While she was doing that, I walked over to my dear mother's house and stole her best horse and a few of her chickens. Ma was chasing me down the trail with a switch in her hand when I turned and and shot the bonnet right off her head. The last I remember, she was running back to the house to get her shotgun. They sent a posse out to get me, and they eventually cornered me in an alley. I had most of them on the ground bleeding when one cheating varmint of a deputy snuck up behind me and hit me over the head with a pickaxe. That made me a bit dizzy as the rest of the posse got ropes around me and tied me up. They were going to use the leftover rope to hang me when suddenly a rider came down the trail into town hollering how the Civil War had just started. The posse gave me a choice, enlist or hang. I joined. They made me a sergeant, and off I went. The townspeople figured they could always hang me after the war if the Yankees didn't kill me first. Most of the time I was in, no one came near me. I'd eat alone, sleep alone. If I was in camp, they'd post one guard to keep an eye out for the Yankees and two guards to keep an eye on me. One day in Pennsylvania, we were in this battle. It was bigger battle than most. We charged a Yankee line under heavy fire and got pretty close to them. I beat the brains out of two very young Yankees. Heck, their uniforms were still clean. They might have been twins, and they fought as hard as they could. They were crying like babies and had their guns all clogged with mud. Still, they held their ground and wouldn't run. I killed one of them with my gun butt, and I stabbed the other one in the back with my bayonet as he tried to protect his brother from me. They were just lying there gushing blood as I clubbed them both something awful. Then for some reason, the battle noise went silent. The fighting hadn't stopped, but right there in the middle of the battle, it got quiet. I just stood there and thought a second. Those two young fellows didn't run away. Scared as they were, they held their ground and tried to protect each other. That cost them their lives. Me, I never protected no one, never helped anyone neither. Hell, the devil's probably a better man than me. I was a waste of perfectly good flesh. All this and more just hit me in that instant. Darned if tears didn't start squirting out of my eyes. I'd never cried before in my whole rotten life. I threw my gun down and just fell to my knees right in the middle of that skirmish and started sobbing about how sorry I was. Then I took off running. I had enough of killing, and I was ashamed and scared. I was scared of myself. I ran off and was almost off the field when my leg flew off. I died a day or two later in an old barn. If that cannonball hadn't got me, I'd be running still today. I wasn't running from the Yankees. I was running from me, and I had nowhere to go. The man in Grandma's chair just smiled. By the way, he introduced himself as Gabe. He noted that in my recent life, I've stolen absolutely nothing. I did confess to him, though, that, well, when I was 4 years old, I snitched 3 seed beans out of a hardware store when no one was looking. Gabe shook his head. He said that I was only 4 and it was 3 stinking beans. He also asked if I remembered going back to that store when I was 10 and placing a quarter on the counter right next to the cash register and then running away. I'd forgotten about that. Gabe also pointed out that I've never really picked a fight with anyone and that I do an awful lot of service work. He said how I'm always in an ambulance of one kind or another, running here and there, helping people. That person you used to be would have used an ambulance to crash through a bank vault. He'd have held patients hostage for ransom. Heaven help any patient that died. Oh, excuse me. Let me turn the page. They'd have gotten to the hospital stripped down, clean of their valuables. Nowadays, you don't do anything like that. Gabe had one other thing to tell me, and I was glad he did. He told me how those two young men I killed wound up just fine. He said how he had some of his people mixed in with the burial parties. They managed to carry the two brothers off to a nearby thicket, and there, lo and behold, they were fixed up just fine. I couldn't believe it. Those two were in really sorry shape. One was darn near missing his head, and the other, poor kid, had bayonet holes all over him and a bowie knife sticking out of his neck. Gabe smiled and said when his guys got through working, those wounds turned out to be nothing more than a mild concussion and not much more trouble than a splinter or two. He also said that his crew gave them both a bad limp and paralyzed their arms temporarily, and that got the boys sent home. They were just 14 anyway. They lived happy lives to the ripe old age of 82. I was very grateful to hear that. My bubble head was about half full of tears. The point is, Gabe said, that you're coming along nicely. Keep this up and good for you and all who know you. Now quit crying and help me get you back into that life you just left. Yeah. Climb back into that body. Yes, you'll remember this evening somewhat. Well, wait, one more thing. We're planning something really big for later today for Thanksgiving. It's the big guy's favorite Earth holiday. We're pulling out all the stops. That's one reason we saved you. You'll be needed. Your grandma and her daughters and many other family members and good people all over the world will have a hand in all this. It's going to be wild. It's going to give you everyone a little taste of heaven on earth. Climb back into your body now through your left nostril. There you go. There you go. You'll see me later today. Just try and do the best you can. I was back in my body. It felt too heavy. Gabe said to rest up for tomorrow. I went out like a light. Thanksgiving morning was well on its way to having a wonderful sunrise. Grandma was in her kitchen making coffee. She had just gotten back from St. Mary's Church across the street. She went there most every day, no matter what. I walked into the kitchen and started looking for a cup. That coffee sure smelled great. There you are. Well, there you go, friends. That's chapter 7. Hope you enjoyed. Bet we'll do another one tomorrow. Okay. And till we meet again, God bless. Remember, these are on my YouTube. Well, you know, if you're looking at them, they're on my YouTube site. I also post them generally on my Facebook or two. Okay. We'll see you later. Thank you and bye now.